That feeling when you're sitting at your desk on a Tuesday afternoon and you catch yourself doing the math in your head. Like, okay, if I make $3,500 a month after taxes and my rent is $1,200 and my car payment is $380 and groceries are maybe $400 if I'm being honest with myself. And suddenly you realize you're basically working just to cover the basics with maybe a little left over for, I don't know, actually enjoying your life. And then you think, what if I didn't have to work for that money? What if the money just came in while I slept? That's the dividend dream, right? Passive income, money making money. The idea that you could wake up one day and your investments are covering your bills without you lifting a finger. My name is Robert, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to build wealth effortlessly, while others stay trapped in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle for decades. And honestly, the dividend question is one I hear constantly. People want to know the exact number. How much do I need to invest to replace my salary? How long will it take? Is it even realistic? And here's the thing. Most people get the math completely wrong. They either think it's impossible or they think it's easier than it actually is, and both misconceptions keep them stuck. But there's a perspective shift that happens when you understand how dividend investing actually works, not as some get-rich-quick scheme, but as a genuine long-term strategy for financial independence. And that shift? It's kind of everything. So let's talk about replacing $2,900 a month with dividends, because that's a real number that actually covers real expenses for a lot of people. And more importantly, let's talk about the fastest, and I mean genuinely fastest way to get there. The math that nobody wants to hear, but everyone needs to. Okay, so here's where most YouTube videos on dividend investing do this thing where they throw up a calculator and show you that if you invest in stocks with a 4% dividend yield, you need about $870,000 to hit that $2,900 monthly target. And then they're like, see, it's simple. And you're sitting there thinking, cool, I'll just pull $870,000 out of my couch cushions. But here's what they're not telling you. The dividend yield is only part of the equation. Let's say you find a stock paying 7% in dividends, which exists, by the way. At 7%, you'd only need about $497,000 to hit that $2,900 target. Still a huge number, I know, but we just cut the requirement nearly in half just by understanding yield. And this is where beginners get lost, because they think higher yield always equals better, which, not exactly. A company paying 10% dividends might be doing that because their stock price crashed, and the market thinks they're about to cut that dividend. It's like finding an apartment that's suspiciously cheap. There's usually a reason. So the fastest way isn't just about finding the highest yield today. It's about finding sustainable, growing dividends that won't disappear when the economy hiccups. Companies like Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, these boring, unsexy companies that have increased their dividends for 25, 50, even 60 consecutive years. They're called dividend aristocrats, and honestly, they're the foundation of this whole strategy. Right. So we've established you need somewhere between $500,000 and $870,000 depending on your yield strategy. Now comes the part where I tell you something you probably don't want to hear. For most people starting from zero, this is a 15 to 25-year journey, maybe longer. But wait, don't click away yet, because here's where the perspective shift happens. Let's say you're 30 years old. You can realistically invest $500 a month. That's not nothing, but it's also not some insane amount that requires you to eat ramen every night. At an average annual return of 10%, which is basically what the S&P 500 has done historically, you'd have about $380,000 in 20 years. Not quite at our goal, but you're close. Increase that to $750 a month, and you're at $560,000. Now we're talking. And here's the thing that nobody emphasizes enough. You don't have to wait until you hit the full number to start feeling the benefits. When you have $100,000 invested at a 4% yield, that's $4,000 a year, or about $333 a month. That's your car payment covered, or your groceries, or your insurance. The financial pressure starts releasing long before you hit full financial independence.
I think this is why so many people give up on dividend investing before they even start. They see the end goal is so impossibly far away that they don't bother taking the first step. But the journey isn't about flipping a switch from employed to retired. It's about gradually, month by month, reducing how much you need from your job. It's about options and breathing room. The strategy nobody's really explaining properly. Okay, so here's where we get into the actual fastest path, and it involves something called dividend growth investing, which is basically exactly what it sounds like, but way more powerful than people realize. Instead of just chasing the highest dividend yield today, you're looking for companies that consistently increase their dividends every single year. Let's use a real example. Let's say you buy a stock today that yields 3%, which sounds kind of mediocre, right? But if that company increases their dividend by 7% every year, which many do, in 10 years, your yield on your original investment is now around 6%. In 20 years, over 11%. This is the magic that happens when you give dividends time to compound. You're essentially giving yourself a raise every single year without doing anything. Your initial investment stays the same, but the income it generates keeps growing. And this is why starting early is so absurdly important. A 25-year-old investing $300 a month until they're 65 will likely end up with significantly more dividend income than someone who starts at 40 and invests $800 a month, even though the second person is contributing more total money. Time is the ingredient that makes this whole thing work.
I'm going to be honest with you. Dividend investing is boring, like really boring. You're buying shares of companies that make toothpaste and soap and insurance policies. You're holding them for decades. There's no excitement, no thrill, no checking your phone every hour to see if your stock went up. And that's exactly why it works. Because the fastest way to replace your salary with dividends isn't about being clever or finding some secret stock that nobody else knows about. It's about being consistent and patient in a world that rewards neither of those things. It's about setting up automatic investments every single month, literally automating it so you don't even have to think about it, and then just living your life. The people who actually achieve financial independence through dividends aren't the ones with the best stock picks or the highest risk tolerance. They're the ones who showed up every month for 20 years and didn't panic sell during the crashes. They're the ones who made it boring and systematic. You know what's wild? The stock market has had some absolutely brutal crashes in the last 30 years. The dot-com bubble, the 2008 financial crisis, the COVID crash in 2020. And through all of that, the dividend investors who just kept buying and holding, they're fine. More than fine, actually, because they were collecting dividends the entire time, and when stocks were down, they were buying more shares at lower prices, which means even more dividends later. The real timeline, and why it might be faster than you think. Let's say you're 28 years old. You commit to investing $600 a month into a diversified portfolio of dividend growth stocks or a dividend-focused index fund. You do this religiously for 25 years. Based on historical averages, by age 53, you'd have somewhere around $750,000, generating roughly $30,000 to $36,000 a year in dividends, depending on your yields. That's $2,500 to $3,000 a month. You just replaced your salary at 53, which means you could legitimately walk away from your job a decade or more before traditional retirement age. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people's expenses actually decrease over time. Your mortgage gets paid off, your kids finish college, you stop trying to impress people with stuff you don't need. So that $2,900 a month might actually cover more of your lifestyle at 55 than it would today. And if you can increase your investment amount as your career progresses, maybe you start at $400 a month in your late 20s, but you're contributing $1,000 a month by your 40s, you could hit these numbers even faster. The fastest way is simply starting now and staying consistent. That's it. That's the whole secret. Look, I know this isn't the sexy answer you were hoping for. You probably wanted me to tell you about some dividend stock paying 15% that's going to make you rich in 5 years. But that's not real. What's real is this. Compound interest and time are the most powerful wealth-building tools that exist, and dividend investing is just one of the most elegant ways to harness them. The beautiful thing about dividends is that they're tangible. Every quarter, money hits your account. You can see it, track it, watch it grow. And unlike hoping your stocks go up in value, dividends are actual cash you can spend or reinvest. They're real. So if you're sitting there thinking about whether this is worth it, whether you should actually start investing for dividends, here's what I'd say. The best time to start was 10 years ago, obviously. The second best time is right now, today, this month. Because every month you wait is a month of compound growth you're giving up. And honestly, future you is going to be incredibly grateful you started. $2,900 a month in passive income isn't some impossible dream. It's a math problem with a very clear solution. And the fastest way to solve it is to just begin.